So we should be expecting a new GPU from AMD very soon, and it should be even worse than the RX 6500 XT, except possibly with a major benefit that the 6500 XT doesn't take advantage of. Now, what am I talking about here? You can see behind me a tweet. This is from Greymon55. Now, why should we care about some weird little digital dinosaur guy making tweets about graphics cards? Well, if you have followed the GPU news and especially rumors and leaks scene for a while now, like I have, you'll know that Greymon55 has a good track record. Anybody can tweet random crap about GPUs, but if you do it on a regular basis and all of your predictions end up being correct, people start to trust you a little bit more. Now, Greymon55 has had some accurate release date and spec information about upcoming AMD GPUs in the past, so I'm going to go ahead and say that I have no reason to believe that that track record would now fail and that this would be wrong. So what are we specifically getting here? We're getting an RX 6500 non-XT version. Pricing apparently around $130, which would mean probably $129.99. Although again, until it actually launches, obviously AMD could change the MSRP. And again, MSRP, what does that even mean these days? I'll jump into what I think this might actually sell for in just a bit, but what are the actual specs? And when's the release date? So the other tweet here is saying there will be an RX 6500 in May, and I think the specifications will be similar to the RX 6400 OEM. And you might be like, there's a 6400 OEM? More on that in a second. Also, we got more information here in the same tweet talking about the RX 6X50 XT coming in June through July, so no exact set release date on that. Now, what is that? So we should probably break out these two topics separately. Maybe I'll actually jump into this 6X50 XT for a second, explain what that is, and then hop back into this RX 6500 thing for a second. So the 6X50 XT is just, that X there is a placeholder for other models. So for example, it could be a 6850 XT or a 6750 XT or a 6950 XT. Basically the 50 meaning slightly better than the version we already have. Like I have a 6800 XT. If I got a 6850 XT, this would be a very small upgrade. The main rumored upgrade that we're seeing here is just jumping from a 16 gigabit per second memory modules to 18 gigabit per second memory modules. And as far as I know, it's not rumored to jump down to the N6 process node, although some people have speculated on that. I haven't seen anything that's convincing me that that's true. I think some of their mobile GPUs are doing that, but not necessarily the desktop GPUs. So anyway, June, July, that's also pushing really close to when we're expecting to see the newer RDNA 3 GPUs. Although keep in mind that the entire RDNA 3 product stack doesn't all launch at the same time. At least that's not what they usually do. We'd expect to see the high end first and then the lower end models trickle in. So that would still give you months, if not even a year, before maybe some of these slightly, lower end models start competing in that space. And we still don't know what supply and availability will look like. So anyway, that's what's going on here. And again, expecting June through July, although if it's that far out, obviously release dates could be changed and products could end up not launching. But I would trust that Greymon's probably accurate on at least what the current plans are here. Now let's talk about a bit more about the 6500 for around $130. Now what do I think about that? Well, first of all, what do you mean similar to the RX 6400 OEM? Well, let me pull up some other articles we've got. So there have been for a while now some information regarding RX 6400 designs. And now these are specifically for OEMs and system integrators. So we're not likely to see an RX 6400 available just as its own separate GPU from AIB partners just specifically for the DIY market. But it sounds like the RX 6500 is going to basically be that card. Now, why would that be interesting? People are already criticizing the 6500 XT, so why do we want something even worse? Well, I mean, the price is lower. $130 is $70 less if we're just comparing MSRPs, and then on the actual market, question mark. But here's the real reason why we'd be interested in here. Does this article have it? Because it's the power draw. Because the 6400, and then according to Greymon, the 6500 would be basically the same specs, only is supposed to be only drawing like 53 watts. And so that would, and the 6500 XT is up here at 107 watts. Why does that matter? Because there's a magical watt number where you don't need an external power connector. That's why it matters. If you have to plug in an external power connector, then people are limited in upgrading to this GPU, especially if you're coming from like a Dell pre-built. I mean, it doesn't have to be Dell, but there's a lot of pre-built systems with cheap power supplies and small form factors that you can buy extremely cheap on the used market especially. So this would be, I think classically, is there's like the Dell Optiplex business PCs. And a lot of times businesses will then upgrade these in bulk and then sell off in bulk all of their old ones, which still have reasonable RAM and CPUs, but they don't have a reasonable GPU for budget gaming. But if you get a GPU that doesn't require an external power connector, I believe the magic number is 75 watts. That's what you can actually draw through the PCIe connector rather than needing to plug in an external power connector. Suddenly, you can plug in a cheap GPU that doesn't need external power. Now, you don't need a power supply upgrade. You don't need to worry about the fact that this is probably proprietary parts and might be hard to move to another case and another power connector, because sometimes even the motherboards have a weird power connector, so it has to be with that weird Dell power supply, things like that, right? So if you can just slot in a GPU directly into this, then maybe you buy this like couple $100 used market business PC, slot in a $130 GPU, and you have a reasonable budget gaming / home theater system kind of a situation. And that's where this could be interesting. But then what sort of performance would we expect? Well, one thing we can look at here is that we'd be expecting 768 stream processors on the RX 6400, and according to Greymon, that's also possibly what we'd be expecting on the RX 6500. Now, the 6500 XT, which is also made using the Navi 24 GPU, right, same GPU, would again then be a very comparable performance per stream processor. Maybe not exactly, depending on the clock speeds and all of that and memory speed. There's other things that can go into this. But the basic idea is 768 out of 1024 is 75%. I used a calculator. Now, why does that matter? Well, that means we can pretty closely estimate the expected performance of this graphics card, both the 6400 and the 6500, based on reviews of the 6500 XT. This is the relative performance chart that if you're used to my channel, I use this one a lot. This is at Tech Power Up, and I find it to be pretty accurate, although obviously it's not perfect and depends on the game you're talking about and all of that. Anyway, but if we set the 6500 XT as 100%, we can then go down to find 75% of that performance, and you know what's magically right there? A GTX 1650. Now, I could be wrong, but I feel like the 1650 also has models, or maybe all of them, as another one of these like 75 watt cards that don't necessarily need an external power connector. So if it's delivering that same performance, and also has that same ability, this is maybe a little bit less exciting, except for the fact of prices, right? Prices right now, I believe a 1650 is selling for more than $130. Now, I also think a 6500 would sell for more than $130. But you know what? Let's pop into Newegg right now. And let's search for what is the 6500 XT actually selling for right now in stock. Let's search like, what we can go. Lowest price, 6500 XT on Newegg. So $270. So these are shipping for $70 more than the MSRP of $200. So if the other GPU is priced $70 less in terms of MSRP, maybe we could expect the 6500s to actually sell for $200 rather than this $270 pricing. Maybe that's just speculation. Also, we have seen prices trending down a little bit as we get closer to Ethereum's proof of stake, and Ethereum prices, went down a bit, things like that. So maybe pricing will get better as we get close to that. So this is a kind of interesting card. It's not going to blow anybody away, but having that special feature is sort of interesting. Now, as just sort of a last minute hardware news wrap up just a few more really quick things. We've seen AMD with huge revenue growth last year, 68%, which shattered even optimistic analysts' expectations. That's huge. Now, revenue isn't the same thing as profits, but I imagine their profits are pretty good here as well. They did release a slide, and a huge amount of this is coming from their EPYC and semi-custom processor sales. So this isn't necessarily just like the DIY gamer market, right? A lot of this is the EPYC sales. I didn't even mean to click on that, whatever. Let's move on to my next thing. This is good news. ASUS is hinting that their X370 motherboards might get Ryzen 5000 CPU support. And one reason why that would be a big deal is just because, so a lot of people have an X370 motherboard because they were on an older Ryzen, and you'd like to be able to upgrade to the best CPU that fits that socket. The problem is just because it fits the socket doesn't mean the motherboard supports it. So it would be nice to be able to plop in like a 5600X or 58, 5900, 5950, whatever, to kind of get your top end upgrade. Even if it's not right now, maybe in the future as new CPUs come out, you can get a deal on like a used, Ryzen 5000 series in the future. So it would be really nice if at least eventually these X370 motherboards do support the 5000 series CPUs. And we've seen some motherboards possibly getting that support or unofficial support, BIOS updates, things like that. Now, this is not official. This is hints. It appears to be somebody on Reddit saying that they're talking to people within ASUS and got this kind of response. Which is along the lines of, until AMD officially supports the chipset with releases of their microcode to add to firmware, we are unable to provide firmware updates for that specific chipset. For other chipsets, some features are not reliant on microcode for other controllers, so can be enabled without AMD support. So it seems to me that ASUS is open to the idea of supporting Zen 3 on X370, but is just waiting for the right conditions to be met before doing so. Anyway, also some more info from Gigabyte and all of that. But the point is, all signs point to we might eventually see an expansion of X370 support of the 5000 CPUs, which I think would be fantastic. It's a little frustrating we don't have it already, to be honest. Now, also just kind of random thing, looks like GT 1010, even worse than the GT 1030, has been spotted, speaking of low-end GPUs. And we do have some info and all that, and this thing's gonna be super, super weak, and apparently was selling for the equivalent of about $70 on the Chinese marketplace, so interesting. Also, weren't we supposed to get the 3090 Ti launch? We were kind of expecting that by the end of January. The 3090 Ti was not just rumors, it did feature in NVIDIA's CES announcements, but like, he said tune in later this month for more details. Well, January's over now. Where's the more details, NVIDIA? All right, I think that's it for me. I gotta get to work. I hope all of you have an excellent day. Let me know what you think in the comments section.